Welcome back. I have three distinguished people who probably collectively know more about the public purse of Ghana than all the experts that we hear about the subject. As I said, they've been there, they've done it, they've served their nations, and they know the practicality of what happens. I start off with the one who spends our money. Ralph Tufor has served twice as Controller and Accountant General from 1996 to 2000 and from 2009 until he retired earlier this year. Edredu Ajiman, now Dr. Edredu Ajiman, was the Auditor General of Ghana from 2001 to 2010, for 10 years. Last but not least is my twin brother, who, because I'm a doctor, also went to get a doctor, Dr. Albert Kandapa. Tonight, he sits here only in the sole capacity of having served as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament from 2009 to 2012. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good. Now, let's start off with your personal take about the Consolidated Fund, which we call the public purse. Let's get some general perspectives on how well you think we manage it and whether we are doing the right thing. Before we get into the specifics, let's start with you with the spending authority, as they call it. Ralph.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you, my viewers. First, the Consolidated Fund is defined by the Constitution as a fund that should receive all revenues, taxation, and other revenues, and except otherwise determined by law. For example, we have the GET Fund, we have the EDIF Fund. These are amounts that are not supposed to be included in the Consolidated Fund. So that's the Consolidated Fund. And you can only spend out of it when approval is given by Parliament through the appropriation, the passage of the appropriation bill that can only spend out of it. And that can be initiated by the Minister of Finance by issuing a warrant directing the controller to pay such and such amount as specified in the warrant. Now, the minister has, almost in all cases, given approval to the payment of salaries without reference to. There's one warrant issue for all salaries. The specific warrants are issued for specific items, like purchase of buildings or importation of materials and so forth. So that's how then at the end of it, an account is prepared for the Consolidated Fund, and then the Auditor General will audit, and this report is issued on or around 30th of June of each year.
The year following
the accounts. That has been
the practice.
The practice. Yeah.
Good. So let's, Dr. Edward, give us some education on the Auditor General's role in the public affairs.
Well, excuse me. As the former controller has said, Ralph, after the accounts have been prepared by the Controller and Accountant General, it's expected to be finished by 31st of March and submitted to the Auditor General. Then we have 3 months to prepare to audit and submit the reports to Parliament. When I took over in 2001, the accounts were in arrears, various accounts, Consolidated Fund, and then the Educational Fund and all the others. But we're able to catch up with the arrears within, I think, 2-3 years. So from 2005 coming, the accounts were always prepared on time. The Controller and Accountant General will submit the accounts, and then we will also audit and submit the reports to the public, to the Honorable Speaker. Actually, we don't submit to the Public Accounts Committee.
To the Speaker.
To the Honorable Speaker, who will then in turn pass it on to the Public Accounts Committee.
Just for clarification, what is the difference between what Ralph will prepare and let's say the kind of report you prepare on the activities of Ghana at 50? They can't be the same.
No. What the Controller and Accountant General prepares is contained in specific acts of Parliament. For instance, this Financial Administration Act.
Okay.
And it specifies, and also the Financial Administration Decree, it specifies how RAF will prepare the account, okay, the format and everything, and the content, what should be in it. When it comes to the Ghana 50, for instance, it's a special report initiated by, let's say, the Auditor General, as a result of amount spent by the committee, and it is based on the articles of the provisions in their constitution, what the Auditor General is expected to do in special cases like the public accounts, like the Ghana 50.
But, okay, from what Ralph does, I just want people to understand clearly what goes on. Can you, in 3 months, audit all the accounts of, let's say, the district assemblies? I mean, the entirety of the consolidated fund. Can that be done?
No,
I mean, I will ask you that, and I also ask Ralph to confirm whether those accounts cover all those kind of subsections of the consolidated fund.
The accounts prepared by Ralph, which is the public account, yes, is different from the disassembly account. The local authorities also, we have a report on them, and also educational institutions. So the one Ralph prepares is for the consolidated fund, okay, as distinctive from the district assemblies and then the common fund, also local authorities, educational institutions.
But all those people are drawing their money from the common fund, aren't they?
From the consolidated fund.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Right. So the one prepared by Ralph for Parliament within
the 3 months, of end of the year
is what we call the public account,
okay,
which is the consolidated
that will
fund
essentially be the disbursements you have made from your
exactly
office, controllers
yes,
office.
Approved disbursements.
Approved disbursements you've made.
Yeah.
So that you take it from there and go to the lower levels.
Right.
Good. Excellent. So, Dr. Kandapa, tell us a little bit about PAC and how it fits into all of this.
But can I put all of this in a context for you, Charles?
Yes.
See, how does a country make sure that public funds, public resources in the hands of government are properly protected? We do this under the Commonwealth system. We do this through what we call the public sector financial management system.
That's right.
And we do have a public sector financial management system in place in Ghana. Yeah. The public sector financial management system works around the annual budget.
Yes.
And there are 4 phases. Annual budget, the process for the annual budget. We've broken it down into 4. There is the first phase, which we call the preparation phase, which is what the government has been doing in recent months.
The budget hearings and all
the budget hearings and whatnot. The idea is that the government will put together all revenues that it expects to get during the year, all loans that it expects to contract during the year, all monies that will come into the hands of the government for the people during the year, they put it in the budget. Then they tell us how they're going to spend the money. So much will go to Agreg, so much will go here, so much will go there. They prepare the annual budget on the basis of that, normally working closely with the National Development Planning Commission. So that constitutes the first phase. The second phase is what we call the approval phase. And under the approval phase, the budget as prepared by the executive comes to Parliament for Parliament to debate and to approve it. It is after Parliament has approved it that the budget is adopted and it is given to...
But there's this very curious thing, if I'm right, just clarify for me, in the Constitution that says you can only change by reduction. In other words, you cannot twist around the executive's proposal.
That is a problem.
But is that correct?
Yeah, it is correct. Okay. That you cannot put extra burden on the government and the people who are managing the funds. So the budget comes to Parliament and it is approved. At that point, we prepare what we call the Appropriations Act. The Accountant General and the Minister of Finance will then take over and execute the budget by releasing monies to the various MDAs. And there are a whole lot of financial rules and regulations to support how they do this. If you want to spend, there are laws and regulations which stipulate how you must do the spending. At the end of the year, and during the course of the year, in fact, they are supposed to capture every single accounting transaction that takes place in the country. His accountants are supposed to do that. At the end of the year, they put it together in the form of, say, the public accounts. He then submits the public accounts
to Parliament,
to the Auditor General within 3 months after the year end. So he compiles all the accounts showing how much money was received by government, how the monies were used, and he takes it to the Auditor General. The Constitution wants the Auditor General to be a fairly independent institution who will then go through the accounts as prepared by the Accountant General and issue a report as to whether monies have been spent in accordance with the approval given by Parliament, whether in spending the monies they went through the laws and regulations as captured in the laws and regulations and the Financial Administration Act, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, he issues a report. But what is audit if there is no independence? I mean, if the government has to audit itself, you might as well forget about it. That is why the Auditor General is supposed to be fairly independent. And when he finishes his report, our Constitution, not any law, our Constitution demands that his report should come to Parliament for Parliament to interrogate it and to determine the course of actions that should be taken.
How do you ensure the independence of the Auditor General?
Well, in practice, we do
unlike
that.
Bodies like SHRAG and things which are prescribed, the independence is prescribed, even though the executive appoints.
I refer to the Commonwealth system. So how does the Commonwealth system ensure the independence of the auditor? First of all, through his appointment. In a place like UK, the Auditor General is appointed by the Prime Minister, yes, but with the express consent in writing of the opposition leader. Okay. Right. In Canada, it is the same. So the system.
Parliament.
Where?
In Canada.
Yeah, it goes through Parliament.
Parliament actually
but the appointment letter is by the Prime Minister. He discusses it with the opposition leader, and they agree on something which goes to Parliament for them to have a look at it.
Does that occur with the opposed? Because a curious thing doing my research for this program was
the fact about the Auditor General.
You're talking about the Auditor General?
No, but I know, but I'm just trying to get, you see, Albert has described a system. I want to get into how it operates in practice. Because one of the things I realized about your position was that it was related to periods of office of particular parties.
Well, I don't have a problem with that.
No.
As for the Accountant General.
Yeah, I'm asking Ralph about whether the convention for the appointment of an Accountant General follows such procedures.
Well, my whole public service life coincided with the office of PNDC in power and then NDC in power. So if we say that it coincided with that one, that may be a bit listen. Now, what I'm saying is that prior to 1992, before the constitutional dispensation came, we've had several controls accountant what.
No, I was only referring particularly to that break in your service. Between 1996 to 2000, then there was a hiatus of almost 10 years or 9 years.
2000, or 52 years old.
Yes.
And I was asked to go home. Yes.
That's the point I'm
yeah.
making. You've correct. Yeah, that's
That's
exactly
what I'm talking about. You know,
yes.
and I came back in 2009
yes.
to continue and so forth. So it is not the issue of coinciding or not coinciding.
You've answered my question. Okay. You were asked to go home. Yes. I think that's more than enough. that is exactly what.
But
you
if
were
I can
asked
finish
to
it
go
off.
home.
If I can finish it off.
Yes, do that.
Right. The
I just want us to relate the theory to the practice. The Accountant General
prepares the accounts. He's supposed to finish within 3 months after the year end. He surrenders it to the Auditor General, who takes 3 months also to do the audit. He brings his report to us in Parliament. And Parliament is then supposed to deliberate upon it and to interrogate it. Today, you know, there are about 275 members
a lot.
In Parliament. All of us cannot sit on it immediately. So in the hands of Parliament, it is referred to a committee, a special committee of 25 members of Parliament, who are asked to examine the report critically and thereafter to submit a report to Parliament. The report that comes from the Public Accounts Committee can be accepted or rejected by Parliament. The point I want to make is that the Public Accounts Committee is only a committee of Parliament, and what they say is not even conclusive. It's got to receive the approval. Now, in all the 4 stages that I have stated, the key thing is that each phase has specific checks and balances. In theory, if all the checks and balances during the preparation phase, during the approval phase, during the execution phase, during the audit phase are respected, then our monies will be well protected. The problem we have is when the checks and balances are not allowed to operate.
Beautiful entry points. That's the thesis. Now let's look at the reality on the ground. For example, let's start with how we prepare our budget and how we spend it. Because what I'm trying to do here is to see how public perception feeds into all the stuff we are talking about. Ralph, for example, the first phase, to what extent is the Controller and Accountant General involved in the preparation of the estimates? And then after Parliament has approved, a beautiful system, but why is there this public perception that there is always a gap between, if you like, prudent expenditure and waste or abuse? What do you think accounts for the difference between what is a beautiful system and what happens in reality? Well, on the expenditure side.
As the law stands now, and can't do my position on this one, I have never liked the position of the law as it is. That's my personal opinion.
Your personal opinion is all that we can go with now.
The Parliament will look at revenue and look at expenditure. And yet the appropriation bill only contains expenditure. It has no reference to revenue. So Parliament will receive a document saying that we will expect to receive revenue of 10 cedis and expenditure of 15 cedis. Have a deficit of 5 what?
5 cedis.
5 cedis. Okay. I will wish for a system where Parliament to give approval to the minister that the deficit should not exceed 5 cedis. In that case, you look at both revenue and expenditure while spending the money. Now, when you give expenditure for 15 cedis, is that right? Even when you spend 12 cedis and revenue becomes 8 cedis, you find a bigger gap, which hasn't been approved by Parliament. I mean, the gap.
Isn't that inherent in the problem I raised earlier about the limits of Parliament's powers in approving the expenditure?
Yeah, because I'm just saying that if in some other countries, they give the Minister of Finance approval for the deficit.
Right.
So while spending money, he's not looking at revenue.
That's right.
But in our country, approval is given for the expenditure. So most of the time, we are difficult to explain. As I give this example, revenue is 10, expenditure is 15. Parliament approves expenditure 15. Okay. Parliament actually spends 12, lower than 15.
So what you're saying is that in the approval process, there is no relationship between what is approved to be expended and the revenue that must come in to support that expenditure, which is really the reason for most of the
The other observation too is when you look at what I term financial democracy, which I define as all monies, all revenues should be known to Parliament, and all expenditure should be known to what? Parliament. All revenues are not known to Parliament, and we are all aware. In some countries, all revenues are known to Parliament. You know, and all expenditure people. So government or anybody who know the power structure. Why do I say so? I got that for a simple example. I mean, can you know about gift to government? It's not approved by Parliament. Grants are not approved by Parliament. Government has to receive them.
The grants from the
I mean from donors and all this and so forth. You know, in some other countries, grants are approved. And
they factored into the estimates that go to Parliament for they are not.
No, some will be there. You know, others will not be there. You get the point. Even now, I mean, if we are all aware of the United States, the UN funds, our soldiers.
Yes.
Yeah, the money they get, it's not in the consolidated fund. The immediate fund, which should be there, but they're not there. It has never come to front of Parliament for those approvals. No, the point I'm making is that you see, we have to go step by step and make sure they have comprehensive revenue, which is known to everybody, and the comprehensive expenditure. And it's giving rise to other people to be in touch with certain institutions. Okay. For example, my village secondary school can approve the Pension Commission, and they will give us 2 generators. But according to their books, they give to Ghana government. But Ghana government said, well, it has gone to my secondary school. You know, these are other expenditures which are outside the purview of Parliament. And I'm saying that it is good to start with something, but it's not good not to make improvement upon this year in, year out.
Yeah.
So those are the issues that can help the revenue aspect of it. Then the other aspect too is what we call internal generated funds.
Yeah.
When we agree that other people can keep 100%, 80%, 70%, and all those things.
And you don't know actually what they are collecting.
We have an idea of what they are collecting. You put them in the spending year, which is difficult to control when you want to reverse. We make them to develop certain habits. That's about this RGF. Even for taxation, we have so many exemptions. So many, look, 5 years tax-free.
I'm getting a very frightening picture.
I'm not frightening you.
Not frightening. No, it's frightening in the sense that, let me put a question in this and ask. For example, you are the Controller and Accountant General.
Yeah.
And fortunately for us, you have been part of this for many, many years.
Yeah.
What would you estimate to be how much of the money that is coming to your mind, Ghana, passes through your hands and you manage it? I mean, all these years, in terms of what you've been saying.
What I'm saying is this. Many a time we wait till when it's a problem, and then we talk as if that problem had never been there. You know?
Yeah.
Many of us sitting here, I'm sure, but I've been aware about issues like judgment deaths and all those and so forth. But when it came out, we all behave as if we had never heard about judgment death. Perhaps your father even received top of the judgment death. But you know, this I'm talking about this. We wait till some years to come. So we didn't know that we had this gift, or we had certain gifts and so forth.
No, because, yes, I think what is fascinating for me is what you are telling us about what actually goes through you to Parliament and all these myriad of funds, which technically, according to at least my understanding of the definition of consolidated fund, should be part of the consolidated fund.
No, I'm saying this because I think what we are talking about improvement.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this because, for example,
we identify the problems. You see, you know it all. I want our viewers to understand the nitty-gritties of where these problems are coming from. So when we prescribe the solutions, as we'll do fairly soon, it is set in a context.
Yes. When we take, I'll give a personal example.
Yes.
We were appointed by Uganda government to go and look at the Uganda Revenue Authority.
Yes.
When it was time for us to be paid, it was supported by the UNDP. They decided to fund it. When it was time to pay one to UNDP, they said they wouldn't pay us. They had to pass to the Ugandan government. And we were complaining, this money, and then the minister was passing. He heard us complaining. He said, gentlemen, this money is for Uganda government. It's not for UNDP. To their book, it's for Uganda government.
The aid is going to the
Uganda government. So Uganda government must receive it first before we will pay. But we don't have that one in Ghana. You know, that agency will be paid directly. And this thing will not go through the books of Ghana. That's the point I want to.
Yeah, no, your point is very clearly made. Honorable,
yeah.
You've served as parliamentarian for 16 years or more, and must have been part of the, as a reputed chartered accountant, part of the process of relating the appropriations bill to other revenues of government, or that should go into the fund. Are you aware of the issues that Ralph is raising now, and how did Parliament address things like that?
See, as far as we are concerned in Parliament, the law says all revenues must be accounted for.
Exactly.
Whenever we're going to construct a law, it comes to Parliament for specific approval. When we get a grant, it doesn't have to come to Parliament for approval before we get the gift or the grant. But that does not mean that when we are presenting the budget, we should not include the grant there. So we look at the revenues when we are approving the budget. We look at the revenues in total, everything as reported. The government is supposed to tell us all monies that will come into its hands and will end up in the consolidated fund. They must account for it. But when we then issue the Appropriations Act, we limit it only to the expenditure.
That's right.
But that does not mean we ignore the revenues. We would have taken note of the revenues, we would have worked on it, and we would have satisfied ourselves that this is the money that is coming. But the appropriations is just what it means, how it is appropriated.
Yep.
Therefore, we limit it to the expenditure side. He's made some very interesting points which we need to take into account.
Looking forward, but before we do that, I just want Ralph to clarify one thing before I bring Edward in. The audited accounts you prepare.
Unaudited.
The unaudited accounts. Does that mean that it is purely on the appropriations bill? All these things that you've talked about are not included? The grants, etc.?
They are included.
They are included.
They are included, yeah.
They are included.
Yes.
So you know about the grants.
We know about the grants. We know about, but for example, a grant approved and received in the year before the budget will not reflect
in your accounts. All right. Now, Edward, this is what you are the Auditor General. You are looking at if you like, the proper audit of our accounts. Listening to what is happening, do you think you are capturing a proper picture of monies that are being spent when so much is being lost? See, what he has said is clarifying some issues about people's worry about the use of, let's say, UN funds, etc. How do you bring all these things into your work?
Well, I think the Controller Accountant General is looking at the appropriation. And the appropriations are the ones which they account for, and then we audit. The income side, or the revenue side, the ones that were put in the budget, plus what probably internal generated funds and all that, they are also captured in the audit, in the accounts and the audit. I think Ralph makes a point about the soldiers' money. We also had the same problem with the auditors' money, because we were auditing the United Nations. And we had the same problem. I think they paid some monies to the direct to the Auditor General, so that the people can spend it and before they go and audit.
Will they pay directly to the armed forces? Or
no, to the Auditor General.
Okay.
Because the Auditor General was auditing the United Nations.
Okay.
So the monies will come to the Auditor General, and then they will disperse to those who are going to audit the accounts, and then they go and.
So unlike Uganda, where it would have gone to Ralph, they come directly
so
to you.
Unlike the, but I think in our case, where it is known, it is like the Uganda one, because if, for instance, UNDP wants to give monies to the Auditor General to do certain projects, the monies will not be given to us directly, but rather it will be made known to the Minister of Finance, who will then make notes that we have received from UNDP so much money. And I think in some cases they will say, okay, then do we reduce the amount of money they've given you in your budget? And sometimes
No, I think the question I'm trying to ask you is, I see what the issue that Ralph has raised is frightening. And what it tells me is that maybe, you know, we are playing at it. And I'm saying that you as Auditor General, to what extent are you able to bring into your work the kind of issues that Ralph is raising, monies that technically Parliament doesn't have to approve of? How do you bring all of these things into your work? Because you are auditing the public purse of Ghana.
We are auditing what has been presented to us, and no more, no less. So if they have not been able to capture something in the account, we don't go fishing for what they have not brought into, unless we are aware, and then we bring them to their notice.
Does your office monitor, let's say, the media reports of ministers and presidents and people receiving grants in the papers and all of that? Does somebody monitor those kind of issues and sit back and say, oh, we don't see this in the report? Something like that.
It is possible that you read from the papers that some monies have been given to a ministry, not a minister as an individual, but to a ministry.
Oh, no, the picture showed the minister receiving the money. That's what I mean.
Right.
It's not a personal thing. But
right. So I believe Ralph would, or the Controller Accountant General, Controller Accountant General will then have to look as to whether these monies have already been captured, or whether the ministry made a report to them that they have received the money. I don't think they will just look at the newspapers and then say, okay, then they record.
No, I'm talking about what the Auditor General does, you see, because what I'm trying to get at is, you know...
But can I make a point here?
Just come in, yeah.
I think the point I made was for improvement. I'm not talking about...
No, we are coming to the improvement. No, I just want to get this clarified. We'll come to the improvement.
Because we all know some of the handicaps, which we are going to work towards it.
But I'm coming to the improvement right now. But I just want this matter clarified. You see, because what I have read in the Constitution, in fact, my understanding of the Constitution is that even those get fund and things you talked about are part of the Constitutional Fund of Ghana. From my understanding of the Constitution.
Specifically for the question that you asked, whether they take into account all newspaper publications. If I have to audit, as an auditor, the accounts of, say, Barclays Bank, in the course of the year, I will be taking note of all publications about Barclays Bank that may have a reflection on the accounts.
I think that's what I want.
I talk to so many people. When I then go to do my accounts, the audit, I prepare an audit program. I do an audit plan, and I put in all these things so that in the course of the audit, I will be checking them. I try to assess what the risks are, where the audit risks are, so that I can put special effort and attention to it. Good. In deciding on the audit risks, I would have taken into account all such rumors, all such wild publications, all the things that have come.
You know, mongering is a crime still.
Well, not when we are doing audit, we still have to rely on them. So yes, they take all these things into account.
No, we've got about another 15, 20 minutes. Let's move forward. Now, from where you are sitting, you've raised a number of issues. I want you to factor in this in telling us how we do better. How we, if you like, well, you've answered it in a way, the gap between the revenue and the actual expenditure. But from all the years of experience in the position that you have had, you've raised issues about the lack of appropriation of some of the laws. How do you see us going forward, adding to the things that you have raised in terms of the role of the Controller General, the relationship to especially the ones, the executive, who ultimately give you the approval? How do we make things better so that we improve on the kind of things you have identified?
Thank you very much. One obvious problem is the ease at which you create more funds. I get worried about it, meaning that all expenditures are on the most of the are on the consolidated fund. Let us ask ourselves this way: when we create additional fund, the constitution hasn't given a limit to which you cannot go below. The salaries of all prominent institutions are on the consolidated fund, and yet you've given Parliament the freedom to create more funds. 2.5%, 2.5% a goods and all those things. The time will come for argument purposes. If all other revenues are being given earrings, a time will come. The consolidated fund is might be one.
Have nothing because everybody becomes specialized.
Everybody becomes specialized. Yes. I think that if you believe the consolidated fund, then there should be a way of limiting the so-called leakage. Yes. By changing part of the constitution. That and I like that situation where we put it. But that's how it is in the constitution. The constitution talk about all tax revenue and other revenue. They haven't made the compulsory for these other things to come in. I have enjoyed several things from USA where I've gone, they give me tickets and I've traveled and I come back. And these are all part of Ghana government money. These are part of the
because those are aids to Ghana government.
Aids to Ghana government. So I think we should look at it and limit the level at which we create funds out of the consolidated fund. We are talking about taking away the freedom of parliament. We're talking about the belief of the country that if it's in a consolidated fund should be the all in all, then we should make sure that we don't take plenty of these things out. There's a very good provision in the constitution that nobody should use government money and buy treasury bills.
That's right.
And buy treasury bills and so forth. And that has been difficult. I know when Eddie was in office, and now doctor, to control. State institutions are buying treasury bills. Which is against the constitution, black and white the constitution. So you have government paying money out of its own money. Which they are trying to address through this through gift mills.
Tell us a bit about gift mills, because that's part of the solution that we're trying to. What is it trying to do there?
There's nothing strange about gift mills. I'll just make it. We have G for Ghana, F for financial. In between G and I is an I. Between F and S is an I. Information integration. Yeah. So it's a system integrating information.
What is the purpose? Is it to make sure that you don't spend what you don't have?
That at a faster rate.
At a faster
as against the manual one we're doing.
Because the minister was trying to explain that last week.
Yes.
And essentially it's to say that you can't go beyond your budget or there's an automatic stop to if you try to overspend.
Yeah, if it is manual.
It is manual.
Is that right? And the said officer make a mistake, he can go through. The way it is, all the figures approved by Parliament have been put into the system. So if, for example, this program should cost 10 cedis, and we are asking for 11 cedis, it cannot be processed to stop.
But you made an important point before I get to which will lead me into the parliamentary issue. You essentially say that all these special funds that are being created, it's not helping us to manage our public funds well.
I think so.
These are issues that are raised by the executive, because by our constitution, they have the power, in a sense, to tell us how to spend our money. Now, Honorable, to what extent, do you have any lean on the executive when they start creating talk tax and all these other things, which, by the way, this year, most of them, they're not even being able to honor or pay the monies into them. What is Parliament's role in all of these things of disaggregating our consolidated fund to so many little things? Is that a good idea, both from your experience as Parliament and from experience as an accountant and as PAC chair?
When we want to create, say, the talk tax, we need to come to Parliament for approval. We debate it, we go through it, and we give the approval. What we don't add is how the accounting treatment should be. And I don't know how competent Parliament is to do that anyway. So it becomes the responsibility, in my opinion, for the Accountant General to determine how best to do the accounting.
Maybe I used the wrong example, forgive me. Talk tax is really a revenue measure.
Yeah.
But you create Get Fund and create all these specialists, what are you saying, expenditure subheads, District Assembly Common Fund. And all of these things, To what extent are you, in effect, diluting the powers of the controller and accountant general, and in fact, diluting the whole Consolidated Fund of Ghana and parliamentary control?
We are not. You see, when we create any such fund, the law is very, very specific. The accountant general should come up with measures, a system to capture such revenues. In consultation with the Auditor General, they are supposed to agree on how the accounting treatment will be. And I don't think they need approval from Parliament for
No,
this.
you see, the point I'm raising is that here we are this year. The National Health Service is collapsing because money is being raised specifically to go into the for payment and administration of the NHIS. It's not even going into it. So what are the controls? What's the purpose of it? I remember we set up a fund on making sure buses run. You remember?
Yeah.
Now, all these funds, we go song and dance. The reality is that most of them, they are paper exercises.
So let's take the National Health Insurance Fund or the GET Fund.
Yeah.
Right. So it comes to Parliament. We give approval. In the budget, they will state how much money they are going to have to allocate to the GET Fund or to the National Health Insurance. That ends up in the Appropriations Act. During the year, the Accountant General is supposed to give the money. If he has a revenue shortfall, he may not be able to do that. And that is the reason why he won't do that. At the end of the year, when he prepares the account, it should show that instead of giving so much, I was able to give that much. And the Auditor General goes to check the records to make sure that how much money should have been given to the NHIS, it was this much.
Are we saying that the Accountant General still manages the disbursement of those special funds?
He manages the disbursements to the NHIS because all the monies come to him, and he's supposed to give a portion to the NHIS.
Yeah, this is because, thank you very much. That's a very important point.
Yeah.
There's also an administrative issue here. We say 2.5% of VAT fund should go to GET Fund, NHIS. Other 2.5% should go to GET Fund.
Yes,
they are there. Now, we are also asking those agencies to collect 3% of the amount. We are also giving 15% also to the common fund, and so forth.
Yes.
And you will see that, as I'm saying, just like the judgment that this thing will end up in court. Because GRA will take away 3%. GET Fund will take 2.5%. Of what? Is it net of, and it's an issue. Is it net of the 2.5%, the 3% taken by GRA, or it's inclusive of what? The 3%. The other issue is that those, some of them are taken automatically, those for energy fund, and all that and so forth. There's a time where you can have an organization have over 200 million in this account.
In an account.
Is that right? And any interest from some other banks, where Consolidated Fund itself
hasn't got any money.
Hasn't got any money into it. But the same government, And I think that when we're able to correct this things as a public interest issue, not as, Mr. B or Mr. C. No. And I think if budgets can be arranged or decide or run to address some of these issues which we have in the Constitution, and then take steps to make room for those which are not there, like grants and all those and so forth. But once it goes to Parliament, it becomes a public document, and everybody can address itself to it. But once we have grants and other things not being made public, I think we'll have a problem in the future.
Honorable, you had some concerns and issues already raised about PAC and how to make it better. One of the things when I was doing my research is PAC becoming too partisan, because I read about the spat you had between you and Honorable Doa Jaho on some of the issues. We're rounding up, so in 5 minutes, tell us the issues and how you think we can go forward with them. Then I'm
not really sure whether the PAC has become partisan or did become partisan while I was there.
But
about 95% of the reports that we issued, we all agreed on them. There was only one issue and that was to do with Mr. William.
Yeah.
The Constitution is very, very clear. If there is a matter that comes up from an Auditor General's report, it is only Parliament that can interrogate it, not the executive. They are stopped from doing that. The Wariomi issue came up through an Auditor General's report. So it was only Parliament that could have taken action on it. But before Parliament could take action, government took it to IOCO, and from IOCO to court. Then when Parliament wanted to sit on it, we were told the matter was in court. I, as the chairman, then argued, you cannot stop us, because we have a constitutional right to go into IOCO. To go into Wariomi, because it came from an Auditor General's report. Some of my colleagues said, listen, we all know that in Ghana, when a matter is in court, the Parliament or Parliamentary Committee should not interfere. But to me, it was more than that. There was a constitutional issue, and it was not just partisanship. It was something
reported as such. So
it was reported as such, but there was no partisan
take that as a
politics
cue, essentially, to raise the issues of how we can do things better. Because I'm particularly worried about the gulf between the Auditor General's report and when matters actually get discussed by PAC. There seems 3, 4, 5 years. Those are issues of concern. But I just want you to sort of...
No, let me put it this way. For many, many years, we couldn't prepare the accounts of Ghana.
Yes, right.
Then there was a time when we managed to achieve that. That was a significant achievement, but we've not heard much about it. For a very long time, we couldn't even prepare the audit the accounts of the Republic of Ghana in good time. Today, we've been able to achieve that. For a very long time, the Public Accounts Committee couldn't even sit on these accounts. Today, we're doing fairly well. And I strongly believe that both the Accountant General and the Auditor General, their departments, should be congratulated for doing this. There are not many countries in West Africa or Africa that are able to achieve that. But we still have some way to go. The accounting, for instance, you can only account, and indeed they are obliged by law to account for every single accounting transaction.
I understand
in all the ministries.
No, because I want us to run up. We have to run up. They are doing their work. They are up to scratch. He is up to scratch. Why is PAC not up to scratch?
Well, PAC...
In a normal corporate world,
yes,
you get your published accounts and then the annual general meeting follows very quickly.
Put it this way. At the time I was leaving Parliament, my committee had about 15, 20 reports that we had considered. We were ready with reports, but these reports could not be laid in Parliament. So I left Parliament. Having left Parliament, all these 20 reports, they need to be started again.
What a shame.
And that contributes to the problem that we have today. But the point that I was trying to make, but we didn't have time for it, is the fact that we can only account when we have a good accounting system. For a very long time, you do not have a functional accounting system. The GIFIS, in fact, is nothing more than a computerized accounting system, and hopefully it will be able to stop all that. Ministries, departments, and agencies will now have a functional accounting system which will give us the true accounting picture and situation, which will make it easy for the Auditor General to audit, and which will provide the much-needed management information for chief directors to take proper actions.
Edward, how do we do better? You are very instrumental in bringing our public accounts to date and making sure that we now, at least in the audited accounts, function like a corporate body. But moving forward, give us in 1 minute how you see things getting better and making sure that some of the issues that Ralph and Dr. Khan have raised are captured in your report so that we get a better idea of the public funds.
I think one of the problems was funding of the Auditor General's office to be able to audit the account. And our problem was that although the Constitution says the Auditor General's budget should not be cut, and that should be submitted to Parliament and so on. Invariably, you'll find that Minister of Finance will have to say that we don't have much money, therefore you cannot get what you're asking for. Also, the release, when it's approved, the release from controller is also another problem. Either the money has not been made and therefore we cannot release the money to us, or the release is late, and as a result, we cannot also do the work that we are supposed to be doing on time. And so it is important that it all revolves around the independence issue, as to whether the Director General is truly independent. How can we be independent when the person who is going to give us the money can control it in such a way that you cannot get the money on time? So
he who pays the piper calls the tune.
Right, so it sometimes
a very good time for us to stop. Well, we have had a very fascinating discussion from people who actually know what is going on, the difference between what we've set out to do and what we actually do, the problems that we have. This conversation, I think, should have several following parts, because we're beginning to learn a lot about the management of funds, how Parliament only considers expenditure and we don't relate it directly to the flow of revenue, how monies which are given to the government of Ghana through various sources do not form part of the funds that are managed by the controller, how the Auditor General is literally sometimes starved of funds if they are getting too close. But it's been a fascinating, I trust we all learned a lot about the management and accounting of the public funds of Ghana. And that when we read all these reports about how things are being done or not being done properly, we will be better informed to learn and appreciate and form our own opinions. I want to thank my guests for a very fascinating evening. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Dr. Albert Kandapa. Thank you, Dr. Eduardo Ajiman. I shall confer the title of Doctor on Ralph Tufo, so that we are all doctors here. Thank you, and we'll join us again next time.